How do you make a game like Grow Garden 2 in Roblox Studio? And last time we've been taking a look at how you can add a growing mechanic like this one, like similar to the way I did in my premium framework you can find in the description. So today, let's find out how we can add this harvest functionality to our game inside Roblox Studio. So we're inside Roblox Studio now, and I honestly think there are two interesting ways you implement this harvest mechanic. The first of which using proximity prompts, like those gray pop-ups, and the second one using click detectors, which you can also use in order to add this sort of plant info label when hovering over a plant. You can always check out the playlist in the top right, but the way I did it, like when it comes to the plants in the first place, is by having those blueprints like this. And now inside here, as long as we added a primary part, for instance, so we can access it in a minute, we can add a new proximity prompt like this. If you prefer, you can also change the action text, change it so that people have to host the thing, or change the key code. But in my case, I just want to disable requires line of sight, in case, this thing is below the ground, so there is geometry obfuscating the view essentially, so it will show up nonetheless. So now you can see it show up like this, and we can interact with it. If you like, you can also, hide this prompt until the growth process has completed, which we will also be touching on. But now let's have a look at how we can connect to this very event inside a script. Though I think I want to actually change this action text, like so. So this is the script we have so far, with this code snippet being triggered every time we plant a seed. And now we can listen to the event like this, with whatever is in here being run every time a player triggers the thing. Let's print as an example. So in my case, I can wait for the proximity prompt child below my plant's primary part, which is why I do this here. And this one gets passed automatically, being the player triggering the thing, because we don't want to allow players to steal other people's crops all the time. So we might want to do a security check in regard to this thing in a minute. But anyway, you can see this empty message popping up now. And obviously this always depends a bit on your setup, but what you most likely want to do is to make sure it's the owner trying to harvest the thing. I guess we're gonna take a look at stealing next episode, and then destroy the physical object. If it's an apple or another type of recurring harvest, you can also scale it or make it invisible or whatever. And then if you like, you can also add a new item to the player's backpack, which you can do by adding a new tool and parenting it to the player's backpack, and then setting its name if you like. Unless you have parts or anything visual attached to your object, you can also disable requires handle and prevent players from dropping it. However, if you would like to have those visible tools, you most likely, like I do in my template, you most likely want to do this via blueprints or templates anyway. You can just clone or duplicate. But for now, let's have a look. Great. And the thing doesn't disappear, and I also can't drop it either. But not sure if you notice, but how do we prevent the player from harvesting it right away? No? Like before it has matured. And the way we've set this up in the past is by saving the plant's time, in here, and then defining the target or completion time as the plant time plus 10 seconds, like for all plants. Then we get the relative progress, like 100%, like this. Make sure it doesn't exceed 100%. So in other words, whenever progress is equal to 1, plant has matured, and now we can obviously put this into a new function. If that's your preferred method, we can also use our update loop in the first place to set a new attribute like this, but gets added all the way down here. And now inside our harvest function, we can use this very attribute in order to cancel in case it hasn't been set yet, which we can do like this. Let's give it a try. There you go. Let's see if I was too happy too soon. No. Perfect. Oh, and by the way, if you've been following the series, if you would like to consume the seed tool, like the seed item, you can also do it like so. There you have it. And now how to hide this thing until the maturity process is finished. Well, this thing comes with a built-in enabled attribute we can just set to false, like so. And then in our update loop, for instance, we can set to enabled like this. And of course there is more performant ways in order to do all of this, but I also want to keep it kind of simple when it comes to this tutorial series. So let's see what it looks like now. And now when it comes to like mouse cursor hover detection, it's quite a similar thing. We can add a click detector, like so. And now you can already see the cursor icon changing, although we also need to connect it, of course. And now you can have both. You know, you can click this thing anyway, but maybe you want to go with this variant instead, or you want to, I don't know, play with the distance a bit or anything like it. Or you just want it in order to detect whenever you should display this plant description label. And in case this thing doesn't show up for you, this might just be because your humanoid root part might just be, you know, a minor or obfuscated, like covered component of it. So in my case, the humanoid root part is this invisible gray box, covering pretty much all of this boundary box, and a little more even, as you can see here. Just in case you're wondering, this is why for me it works so reliably. But now how to connect to it inside our code. We can connect to it like this time around, as you can see here, like in the console. And now if we're dirty, we can essentially copy paste this entire thing into here to replicate the behavior. However, I'm not, at least not today, if you will. So what I want to do instead is to kind of encapsulate this, like cutting it using Ctrl and X. And now I can put it into a new local function up here with those 3 arguments as an example. And now I can just call this function below here and pass or transmit, if you will, the 3 important attributes, or instances I should say. Which, you know, makes it way easier to debug and also to change in the future. Since, you know, otherwise chances are you might just forget to, you know, when changing one thing, to change the other. So let's see if it works nonetheless. Okay, that's good. And by the way, you can also see the activation distance come into play here. So yeah, it looks good to me. So next time, once we implement stealing, chances are we want to remove this again, or maybe nerf it a bit, because otherwise, you know, it might just be too powerful if players can just steal things like telepathically, I guess. But yeah, if it helps, I will also put this entire Roblox file into the description for download for you. But now if we want to do a final test in multiplayer, we can do it by setting this to server and clients, and then start with 2 clients right away, for instance. Click here, there you go. And as you can tell, I'm not able to steal it, like neither this way nor this one, this way. Oh, and if you want to, you know, disable this mouse detector during the maturity process, you can do it pretty much the same way as with the proximity prompt, but not 100% because it doesn't have an enabled attribute to it. But you know, we can still like set the max activation distance to 0, for instance, and then set it back to 10 or so in here. So awesome. Yeah, and this is how you can add harvesting to your Grow Garden 2 game. So if you need help with any of this, feel free to let me know. There is also a separate version of this plot system you can find somewhere like on my profile. But anyway, I see you next time when we're going to add stealing to our game, and happy coding until then.